Hello, and welcome to episode 67 of Cutscene Convos. Quiet week this week. No new
Yes.
content. We're in a bit of a film season. There's no shows, so we got, at the minute anyway, slightly longer breaks between stuff. But it means we got some time to talk about some other things. So
Mhm.
this week we've got a character profile on Spider-Punk. We will be discussing superhero movie fatigue again, because that conversation has reared its ugly head once more. We're also going to be ranking all of the live action Star Wars films, and it's going to be a doozy. We're then going to discuss how we both, or our earliest memories of superhero media in general, and see how they correlate, and maybe see if you guys resonate with any of them. As well as a pretty stacked Nerd News network, actually, which we did say would probably happen when there's no shows coming out, because people are going to want to stay in the news cycles. So there's some stuff to be discussed before we move on to the replacement of the Superhero Showdown, the Content Championship. Ooh. But more about that later and how that is going to work. But for all that good stuff, Horizontal, how's your week been?
I like the
The
ooh.
ooh.
The crowd goes wild. Um, my week has been. What has my week been? Saw the girlfriend on the weekend. Then been doing work this week, keeping on top of things, working on different projects, KCP related and otherwise. What else has been going on? I don't know. This week's like kind of blend. It's been a weird one where
The
I don't.
month of May is chalked.
Yeah, it's like such a weird. I think because I said it last week, but like we're being ill, then going away, then being still a little bit ill. Then it's like then I went to go. It's like I feel like I've been all over the place. Um, yeah. Other than that, I've kind of just been doing work, keeping on top of things. Got a bunch of projects upcoming with Apex and Rocket League majors on the horizon in July. Yeah, July. Um, so that's going to keep me busy. And then other than that, I've been playing. I've been hooked by a new game. Well,
Okay.
new-ish game. The dopamine has taken me to the world of Farming Simulator.
You're joking.
No, I'm really not.
Oh, Hori.
The funny thing is, it's like I do enjoy the simulator esque games. They're fun, and then something
Yeah,
about
but they're
like
fun for like 20 minutes
yeah, but
every couple of months.
you add in sandbox, like essentially what is with farming, you sandbox, you build a farm and you grow it. It's I don't know. It's hooked me. My brain's like, dopamine, we must chase. So we'll see how long that lasts. Maybe it'll be probably be Destiny again at the end of the month because the new season comes out. So
Dreadful, dreadful, dreadful,
it
dreadful.
honestly is bad. It's yeah. That's what my life been working and doing farming in a game.
Phenomenal.
How, I'm sure your week's been more entertaining.
No, not particularly.
Oh,
Um, it's just like the guys who spin the plates on the sticks,
mm-hmm.
and then they get up to like 6 or 7, and you're like, oh my god, how are they not dropping any?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I'm trying to do at the minute, with lots of different things going on and trying to keep them all moving at a steady pace. I'm just kind of there like, eh. And they're all equally important, so none of them can be stopped. Which just means I'm kind of there hoping and praying none of them start tumbling to the ground.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, work is work. It's just a lot. It's busy at the minute. It's one of them periods when everyone's kind of a little fed up with just the standard shenanigans that take place. So it's a lot. But I did finally, after I don't know, when did Fallen Order come out? Jedi Fallen
Mate,
Order. No,
what?
Fallen Order. Uh,
Ma,
2019. There we go. So 4 years later, I
oh,
finally finished Jedi Fallen Order.
nice.
And before the podcast tonight, I bought and started Jedi Survivor. So there we go. That's kind of been my hyperfixation for the last week. Just every spare hour here or there has been just slowly working my way through that game. And it
Very
was a
good.
great experience. I enjoyed it greatly. Most of the story had been spoiled for me because it's taken me 4 years to get through it. So, um, but I'm looking forward to playing Jedi Survivor now.
It does look good.
It does, and I'm enjoying it so far. But should we get on into it?
Yes, I think we should.
Well, we are fully on train Spider Verse now. We are
Okay.
like literally like 2 weeks out.
Oh, yeah, we
In
really
f-
are.
yeah, the earliest you can see in the UK is Thursday, the 1st of June, right late in the evening. So like we are 2 weeks away from what can only be described as like potentially the pinnacle of comic book media. If it does what it can do. And one of the people that we know are going to be in this film is a Spider-Man who's referred to as Spider Punk.
Mm.
So he is the Spider-Man of Earth 138. Um, he is Spider-Man, but he's also known as Spider Punk to the other Spider-Men. He's also known as Hobart Brown.
What a name.
And he first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, number 10 in 2014.
So quite new.
Yeah, he is relatively new. So he was bitten by a spider irradiated by illegal waste dumping. Hobart, or Hobie, then took on the moniker of Spider-Man. And the foul-mouthed teenager would then team up with Captain Anarchy and the Hulk to fight for freedom against the evil President Osborn.
Interesting.
So it's a bit of a. I mean, he's called Spider Punk. He
Mhm.
would come under kind of this anarchist idea. His Earth is a bit more fascist in idea, so they're having to fight up.
Mhm.
So he essentially created a superhero team, but they were also freedom fighters. So like they were all very negatively portrayed by the media. As Spider-Man is by J. Jonah Jameson, but instead all superheroes were treated that way because it was quite a restrictive regime.
Got you.
Um, So then, after defeating President Osborn, he then acted as Earth 138's Spider Man until the Great Hunt began, at which point he joined the Superior Spider Army. The Great Hunt was when kind of the collection of Spider Men came together, and they were essentially being chased by a villain who wanted to kill all of the spider totems. So,
Oh.
to keep it simple,
Mhm.
Spider Man only became Spider Man by being bitten by a spider because he was already a spider totem.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that same spider biting me or you wouldn't have given us spider powers, it would have just killed us.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they are all weaved together by the web of destiny.
Yep.
Um, these spider totems run all the Earths, obviously. A particular villain wanted to go out there and kill all of the spider totems. That's when they all came together to work together.
Got you.
Pretty simple. But there is a quote here from Hobart Brown, Spider Punk, that I quite enjoyed.
Oh.
So I'm going to read that to end off the character profile. And Hori's going to know exactly why I enjoy it as I'm reading it. We don't have the power of the state. We don't have the authority on our side, the cops or the media. What we have are angry hearts, clenched fists, love and rage, and 15,000 watts of punk rock from an army of amps all set to 11.
You shouldn't just read that off some random Twitter account.
Mate, is it not just the most anarchist punk shit you've ever heard?
It is, and strangely feels a bit too relevant for today's day and age.
I don't know what you're possibly talking about. So yeah, it's another Spider-Man character
Mhm.
that's going to be very exciting to see make his big screen debut. Also, interestingly enough, Spider-Punk was kind of an accident.
Oh.
So the design for Spider-Punk came from an early design of Spider-Man UK.
Oh, okay.
So they got it down to like the last 3 or 4 designs. They went with the Spider-Man UK one, but the writer of the story loved that design so much he created a whole new character for that design.
Cool. That's pretty cool.
Which is just once again showing that really good art does not get wasted.
Yeah.
They will find a way to use it. So,
Okay.
Hori,
Yes.
do you feel that you are fatigued on superhero films?
So, had you asked me a month ago, I'd have been like, little bit there, maybe. It's valid. You know what? I don't think superhero fatigue actually is a thing. My bold take on this is people aren't tired of superhero movies. People just want good films. And the problem we had was Marvel, especially, went quantity and lost quality because they thought people want more. And what always happens is when you do quantity, you lose quality. And then Guardians of the Galaxy has come out, which is a quality superhero film, and everyone loves it, and no one has any complaints about superhero movie fatigue. Um, which I think proves the point that like a quality film is just what the fans want. I don't know how you feel on this.
I think I agree for the most part. So I think there is a big thing we can do to kind of solve this debate once and for all.
Hmm.
Stop classifying them as superhero movies. They're movies.
Yeah,
People are never going to be tired of movies. Just make sure it has a compelling story.
yeah,
And I think this is where the problems kind of come from. For so long, it's gone, and I partially blame Martin Scorsese because he compounded the problem by going, "Oh, that's a Marvel movie. It's not cinema." No, it can all
yeah.
be cinema. James Gunn has fucking proved it can be cinema.
Hmm.
Um, so I think instead, what we need to do is get out of this mindset of, "Oh, it's a good Marvel movie. Is it a good movie?"
Yeah. No. I agree. I think it's a case of like we need to stop one. Yeah, calling them superhero movies. This isn't superhero movie fatigue. If anything, it was just Marvel fatigue because Marvel was trying to pump out so many. Um, and like you say, these are just films. They are movies. They don't have to be classified. Like if you realistically, if you want to put them into anything, you could classify them under action because of what they generally are. Everyone wants action films. Like,
There's never been a discussion of, oh, action film fatigue is here, comedy film fatigue is here. People don't get fatigued of genres as long as they're still compelling.
yeah, this is exactly it. It's like another example of this, right? People aren't bored of action movie films. People are kind of getting bored of Fast and Furious though, because it's being once again quality and quantity. Like it's just if you start trying to pump out too much in a franchise, that's where the issue is coming from, not a certain genre of film. Um, I'm glad that this has kind of come up again though, like with Guardians of the Galaxy coming out and kind of they've proven that it's not dead. Um, but yeah, that's I don't know what else we have to say on it
Uh,
other than
I I think the main takeaway from Guardians 3 in regard to super movie fatigue is people don't care about, oh, the world's in danger again. People want to care about the characters. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand 1 and 2 laid the groundwork for why people care so deeply about Rocket.
mm-hmm.
But if you make 1 and 2 character centric anyway, it doesn't matter because people are going to fall in love with the characters. Trilogies have always had to build characters up. So as long as you make it character centric from the get go, it's not going to be a problem.
Yeah, I think as well an issue before, like with Guardians, it didn't feel like it's playing into something bigger, even though we know, like, I think that was another issue with just keeping it with the MCU because I think that's where the issue actually was. Is we got out of Endgame, so then immediately everyone's like, okay, well they're gonna just repeat the process and build up to a new big bad. So then everyone's like, how are these all playing together? And too much focus has been put into building them all into each other and setting up this new thing, and not just give us character based films with like the little hints, and then in time everyone will get attached to the characters and are more looking forward to the big build-ups. So
Yeah, I think that's completely fair. Um, And if James Gunn is going to take this style of storytelling over to DC, we're going to find out very quickly if movie fatigue was real, is real,
Mm,
will ever be real, or if people just need their films to evolve slightly.
yeah, no, I think that's a fair point.
So moving on to our next topic. There's a bit of background to this. So a couple of weeks back, we decided to have a little deep dive on the MCU Phase 4 to see if it was really as bad as everyone said.
Yes.
And then as a result of that, the algorithm did some algorithming, and I have been shown a number of dog shit Star Wars rankings. And this got me thinking. If people are gonna sit down and watch these dog shit Star Wars rankings again and again, why don't we put a decent one out there and see how people feel about that?
Just asking for the commenters to
Yeah, no,
come and
100%.
tell us we're wrong.
And I will swing. So what I think we're gonna do here is
Okay.
I'll go through my list top to bottom. You go through your list top to bottom,
Okay.
and then we discuss our lists.
Okay.
Purely because if we can try and keep our lists reading to 60 seconds, I can just
Okay, let me
yeah, you get about 5 seconds for each one. It's very easy. So starting off my Star Wars rankings at number 1,
Okay, so
Rogue
top.
One.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
top to bottom. Top to bottom. So I'm starting off with Rogue One. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone who knows me. Then, in a very, very close second, Empire Strikes Back, followed by Return of the Jedi, and then A New Hope.
Okay.
We then have Revenge of the Sith, Force Awakens, The Phantom Menace, Solo, The Last Jedi, Attack of the Clones, Rise of Skywalker. I will hear some arguments for certain positions on that, but for the most part, that is a fucking phenomenal list.
Okay.
Oh, that was a very if you
There
think
was
so.
like the mid to late bit. There's a lot of I have a lot of difference.
Is it just everything's like one or two in different ways, or
Well,
have
the
you got
beginning
something
was
that I'm
like
going to be flabbergasted by?
possibly. I don't know. We'll find out. I'm just double checking my list because it took. I have to say, like, it took me so long and so much like moving around, and it's really hard. There's so many films, and it's really hard as well to remember like all my issues with some of them.
I would say basically every block of 2 on here I could have inverted relatively easily.
Yeah.
But this is where I ended up falling.
Okay. Starting at my top to bottom, and we'll be interested to see who gets more hate. In number 1, I have Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. In number 2, I have Empire Strikes Back. Then in 3, I have Rogue One. In 4, I have Return of the Jedi. In 5th, I have A New Hope. In 6th place, I have The Last Jedi. Then in 7th, I have The Force Awakens. In 8th, I have Phantom Menace. 9, I have Rise of Skywalker. 10, I have Solo. And 11, I have Attack of the Clones.
Okay. So we're not massively dissimilar here.
No, there's just a bit of a weirdness in the middle.
Yeah, we've got a couple of like blocks in a row that are the exact same, and then you've just got a couple that are like scattered slightly differently. Okay. So
Do we start at the bottom?
yes, let's start at the bottom. So
Okay.
I had Rise of Skywalker, and you had Attack of the Clones.
Yes.
Now, I will be honest, I spent probably more time than any other two deciding which way round I wanted to put them to. So I do not have a lot of issue of Attack of the Clones being dead last. I think that's completely valid.
I tried my best, and I kind of lost it with my first place. But I really tried to not let the animated series influence my decision, because obviously the Clone Wars animated series adds a lot to the prequels, but on their own, like Attack of the Clones, I felt was it was that weird period we've talked about before where they tried to do too much CGI, so that kind of messed it up. It felt like the story was a bit weird. I will say, obviously, Ewan McGregor amazing as Kenobi in it, and Christopher Lee as Dooku, Count Dooku, like two best things from that film. But
Yeah.
grand scheme of things, it's at the bottom for me.
I think if it wasn't for how well the prequels have aged in my eyes, it would have been last for me. But as I've got older, I look back on the prequels with a lot more appreciation,
Yeah, no, I do agree with
which I
that.
think is how it got off the bottom spot for me.
Hmm.
Obviously, I had Rise of Skywalker dead last.
Yep.
Um, I didn't like Rey Skywalker, and anyone who's listened to any other episode of this podcast ever will know that's not because I'm a sexist or anything stupid like that. I just didn't like Rey being
She's
Palpatine's
nice.
grandchild, full stop. And then The Last Jedi just felt like a weird kind of naming fan zone thing, and I just didn't like it. A lot of it was quite weird. The big saving grace for me with Rise of Skywalker was how pretty it was. Like, it was a very nice visual film.
Mm,
But when that's the only thing that I come out of Star Wars experience really being able to complement, it kind of goes to the bottom.
yeah, I mean, I'd say the bottom three of mine I could interchange with Rise of Skywalker's in there. So
So
I
what
mean,
did you have at 10?
so at 10 I had Solo.
You had Solo. Right. Okay. Talk me through your reasoning for that.
Okay, honestly, story's kind of boring, and it kind of felt like a stretched out excuse to explain the parsecs comment, and that's
Yeah.
kind of all it was. It didn't really add anything crazy, and if honest, to be honest, the best thing out of it was Donald Glover as Lando. Um,
I
Other than that,
completely agree.
it's just like they didn't really add anything crazy new to his backstory, and it literally was all about this like showcasing the parsecs thing. And it's like, well, why have we had a whole? They could have done so much more with a solo story. So that's why it's down at 10. It just didn't feel like it was worth a film for that one, like kind of.
See, I completely agree, but that's actually why I've got it higher.
Okay.
Because I didn't expect as much out of it. Because it
Mm,
was a story from the Star Wars universe, I didn't have the same expectations as I do from an episode. So I was kind of like, it's not offensive. It's inoffensive. Don't get me wrong, it's nothing special. But I get a bit of Chewbacca. I get to see the Kessel Run. Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian was a really good casting choice.
mm-hmm.
It was inoffensive. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't make it a good film. That's why I
Yeah,
still have it quite low. But I don't have as much expectation from it as I do from other films, which is how it managed to get higher for me.
I can understand that.
Um,
What did
so
you
for
have?
Attack at 10, I had Attack of the Clones.
Okay.
So I completely agreed with your criticisms of it, and like I said, I almost had it in 11. But like I said with Rise of the Skywalker, the only good thing out of that for me was how pretty it was. Whereas for the Attack of the Clones, the good things for me were Ewan McGregor, Christopher Lee, bit of Django Fett, bit of Mace Windu. Like, it had just a couple more moments where I was like, it makes it more worth it. So it ends up just going up above it for me.
I yeah. I mean, I can.
Still not a good enough film.
No.
And I wish, as stupid as it sounds, I almost can we remaster films? just try again. We'll pretend we didn't see the original one.
Okay, so what did you have in 9?
9. I had The Last Jedi.
Okay, you had The Last Jedi, which I higher. I had Rise of Skywalker. But talk me through
Very
Last
nice.
Jedi.
Okay, so Last Jedi. I remember when I watched the film, I didn't get the initial hate for it. And I could easily have The Last Jedi up one more spot, I think. Um, but looking back, I realized how done dirty Finn was in that film. He got turned into not even a side character, like a background character in that film. Um, and as a result of that, it kind of falls down my estimations a fair bit. I overall love basically all Star Wars content. I'd say the only two on here that like genuinely I think are horrid are Attack of the Clones and Rise of Skywalker. I could have easily put Last Jedi up another spot. It's just when I look back at it, I didn't leave the cinema like, I was like, that was pretty good. I went and saw a Star Wars film. I'm happy enough. But I just wish they'd given Finn the story he deserved.
Yeah, I can understand that. For me, 9 was The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
Now, as we said, like the bottom 3, I could have quite easily probably interchanged. Um, for me, Rise of Skywalker, it was just a mess of an ending. Like, and obviously, a lot of its issues came down to the issues of director changes throughout the trilogy. Sure, but at the end of the day, like it was a mess of an ending and added in like for no like it felt like no reason. Just suddenly it's like the last of the trilogy and it just chucks in a whole new set of plot lines for like no reason. Like nothing gets really tied up properly. It's like, oh, here's a new plot line and we just tie it up immediately. It's like, hang on, what the fuck? Where's that come from, or what for the whole thing? Um, and then we obviously had the whole fucking Palpatine shit, which arguably has sparked some of the best Star Wars TV shows. Because you can't tell me that Mando and all that hasn't been written purely for the fact of fixing things.
Yeah.
So yeah, for 9, it was Rise of Skywalker. It was the worst of the Disney, and honestly, was just like a complete mess story wise. So yeah, that's what my 9 was.
Okay. So that puts us on to 8.
Mm-hmm.
Now remind me what you had at 8 again?
I had Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Okay. So I had Solo at 8.
Okay.
Again, like I said when you were saying why you had Solo so low, Solo so low. Um, I don't have as much expectation from that film
Yeah.
as I did from The Last Jedi, Attack of the Clones, Rise of Skywalker, and it is completely inoffensive. It
Yeah.
adds a little bit. It gives you context to them talking about the Kessel Run. Donald Glover as Lando Calrissian is exactly what I wanted it to be. It's charismatic, it's charming, it's funny, but nothing special.
Yeah. That's all understandable. So for me, with Phantom Menace, Darth Maul's sick. Love Darth Maul. Can't go wrong with Darth Maul. The pod racing, also fun as fuck. But at the end of the day, when you look at it as when it came out, and you've got old Star Wars fans, like sure, it was great for the old Star Wars fans. We're back in Star Wars. There's little like things they're starting to pick up on, like that link stuff. But realistically, that story for like a new fan, it's kind of a bit slow and boring. Because it's like, yeah, sure, it's trying to set a lot up, but it's like the previous fans understand that, but like new fans, it's like, nah. Also, I don't get the hate on the actor was not deserved, but Jar Jar as a character was like, I mean, some love him, some hate him. I don't hate him, but it's just like it's Jar Jar Binks. Like the only thing that saves that character for me is the theory that he is a Sith, and I still hope that becomes true. So yeah, I have. It's the worst of the prequels in my opinion. Um, and don't get me wrong, like you said earlier, the prequels over time, I have a bit more appreciation for them now. So there's a lot more parts of them that I actually do enjoy, but there's still a lot of parts where I'm like, yeah, it's so.
Yeah, I get that. So ironically, I have the Phantom Menace at 8. No,
No,
7.
7.
Um, and I have it above Solo. Um, and I agree with all the points you made. There is a reason it manages to get up as high for me, is because any individual bit from that film in isolation is very enjoyable. They just didn't put it together quite right. It just doesn't sit together
Yeah,
nicely. But like the Duel of the Fates is
yeah.
phenomenal. The pod racing, phenomenal. Getting CC3PO, phenomenal. Qui-Gon Jinn, all these little bits are so brilliant. And don't get me wrong, once you get a bit older and you get the context um from the original trilogy,
Mm.
you then like appreciate them a lot more. And the Clone Wars animated show doing even more with Darth Maul and stuff 100% brings these films up. But that's why looking at how content ages is so important.
Mm.
I think by the time all the Mandoverse stuff is done and Dave Filoni's finished fixing the shithousery around the sequels, we're going to look back on the sequels with much less ambiguity.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of other Star Wars content helps repair the perspective of some of these films.
100%. So, what did you have at 7?
So for 7, I had The Force Awakens, which was the first
Okay.
of the Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Visually, thought it was stunning. It was great to be back at Star Wars. I think they did a great job with like the VFX and bringing like a new kind of facelift to the world of Star Wars. My biggest issue with that film, it was just New Hope. It was a mirror image of New Hope, and it's like, okay, cool, that's a good story, but like we've had it. Like you had the opportunity to come in and take us to a new era of Star Wars, and you did the exact same story just with kind of fresh VFX and fresh faces. Um, so that's why it's very much middle of the pack. It's like it's not like the story is not bad. We've just had it. Like that's the. It's like it's not a bad film. It's just we've done this before. So
Yeah, no, I get you.
that's why
Um,
it's like middleware.
so I have The Force Awakens at 6.
Okay.
um, and the reason I have it at 6 is because it's basically a New Hope. You can't go wrong with a New Hope.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. That's the thing. Is like it's a New Hope was a good film. This is
Hey,
story's good, but it's like we've had it.
if they sold A Force Awakens as like a civilization retelling the events of A New Hope and just getting bits slightly wrong, we'd be sat there going, you know what? I like it. Or if they just went, we want to put a new spin on A New Hope and tell the story just a slightly different way. And like, see, George has given us some ideas of how he would have done it if he had today's technology. So that's what we want to try. I think everyone would have been like, yeah, fuck yeah. But you got to remember, no one really hates The Force Awakens. People have some strong opinions about the second two in the sequel trilogy. But The Force
Mm.
Awakens, everyone's like, it's not a bad film. And I'm not sure how many people realize that's because it is just A New Hope.
Well,
It's A
no.
New Hope turned up to 11. That's all it
When the
is.
film came out, many people were just like, "We've just watched A New Hope." And it's like, "Hey, copy my homework, but just change it a little." And
But
it's
it was
like,
still so watchable. It's crazy.
well,
I don't know any other franchise that could literally put out the exact same film and everyone go, fucking loved it.
I think the
So
thing
good.
is well to note with that film is just like we had there was such a huge gap from the prequels coming out, and it's like this was to restart the Star Wars franchise, kind of, and it's like okay, well you've just started with the same. It was like remastering the films. But for 6, I had the Last Jedi. Now, in my opinion, because you had this lower, correct?
Yes, I did. I had this down 9.
So for me, this is the best of the Disney trilogy.
Okay. So I assume you've got it higher because you view The Force Awakens as just a regurgitated film. So you like this because it's different.
Yeah, I liked this because it essentially kind of threw away, it moved away from the very standard Star Wars tropes that we saw in the first one, we started to get some new stuff and some new direction with things. I will say I agree with the fact that like the payoff on Finn was never there, but I feel like that's more of a fault of the rise of Skywalker at the end than it is this film. This film kind of still lent on some things. He just was more sidelined because of what was going on. And Luke, I really did love the way that they portrayed Luke's character and the things that he went through and where how they got him to this new place that was now in. I think that was great. I think the storylines were great, and it kind of was okay. This is going in a more new, interesting direction, and then the third one came along and just absolutely fucking ruined it. So I have more problems with Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi I actually really enjoyed.
Okay. I don't know. I don't think I can criticize any of your points there. I think it's one of them things where this really just shows like preference. I think
Yeah,
for the most part we're in the same ballpark with a lot of these films, and then there's just certain things we categorize as more important than others.
yeah.
Um, these lists are still a lot better than everything else I've seen, so I'll take it. We're now into the top half though.
We are into the top half now.
So what did you have at 5?
So I had A New Hope.
Okay, cool.
Now I will say the top 5 was quite difficult as well. Of like
Hell yeah, brother.
deciding which one I liked more than another when they're all great films is really fucking hard. So for me, I put New Hope at 5. I think it's a great introduction to the world of Star Wars. It's a great way to like that they could have kicked off the franchise. I think the film, the story, like introducing us to the characters and all that, amazing. I feel like the reason I put it like down at number 5 was more so over time. I do feel like the VFX and stuff have started to feel dated, that it kind of pulls away from it a little bit now. Obviously, at the time of it coming out, like it's great. I think to try and find some factor to rank these, like it's just slowly becoming a bit dated in its look.
I think
What
that's fair.
what did you have it at 5?
So I had Revenge of the Sith at 5.
Okay,
Um, my reasons are pretty simple. It is the only one of the top 5 that I have not always loved.
okay, that's a
The other
fair.
the other 4 I've always adored from the first time I've seen them to the most recent time I've seen them.
Hmm.
Revenge of the Sith was not always one of my favorite films. So I couldn't in good faith put it above the others. I watched it recently, which is really rare for me, as we discussed before. I don't really rewatch a lot of
Yeah.
stuff, but I watched it last Friday, I want to say. I was
Okay.
playing Fallen Order. I put Revenge of the Sith on my other monitor. I had a phenomenal 2 hours. Um, there
Love
is
that.
still parts of the acting that are a little bit eh. There's
Yeah.
bits of CGI that are a little bit eh. But overall, it feels like peak Star Wars. And if I'd always felt the way I feel about it now, I probably could put it higher.
Mm.
But I can't say, oh, I've only started to love this film as I've aged slightly, therefore it can go above things that I loved the first time and will always love.
I think that's very valid way to do it as well.
But in keeping with tradition, at number 4, I have your pick for number 5. I have A New Hope. Um, I say this in like the lightest way possible. A New
Okay.
Hope is well known as the worst of the original trilogy, and it's not that it's bad at all. Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back are just so unbelievably good
Mm.
that A New Hope, which is there to introduce you to this universe, just doesn't have as much going on because it's trying to set up the world for you, let you know what's going on. It's got a lot of heavy lifting to do for
Hmm.
the other 2 films, so the other 2 films can focus so much on the story.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, I adore A New Hope. A New Hope being so good is why The Force Awakens is so good.
Yeah.
Um,
Fair.
but it's not an unpopular opinion, I don't think, to say it's the worst of the original trilogy.
No,
Therefore, it goes in at 4.
I think that's perfectly valid. For
What was your number
me,
4?
at 4 was Return of the Jedi.
But yep.
So as you said, the trilogy, New Hope is the worst of what is an amazing trilogy. Usually in trilogies, often the second film dips. Somehow Star Wars completely avoided that, and every film seemed to like be
It,
amazing. Um, Return of Jedi is like an epic conclusion. Like these top four now, very much could go. They all could just sit at number one for me. It's like Return of Jedi was the epic conclusion to that the original trilogy. We got the whole Luke versus Darth Vader, and the everyone hitting like it all coming to that conclusion and that ending, and it is a great film. There's not really any downsides to it. I just happen to like some other films more, so they go higher.
yeah.
Um,
This is proper 98 plays 99 territory in it.
yeah, literally, it's this is now just personal preference. Like I just put other films above Return of the Jedi, but it is a great film.
Yeah. So coming into three, I think you have
Mm.
something that's going to make this is probably the closest I'm going to get to losing my mind, but I'm going to stay calm and respect your opinions.
So I have your number one pick in Rogue
Yeah.
One,
Yeah, you got Rogue One at three here.
which, once again, great fucking film.
So damn good.
It knows what it was. It has the comedy that we love from like the droids and all that stuff. We have so many fucking epic battles in there. Uh, and it has a very clear focus on where it has to be because it has a very set goal of like this thing is gonna happen because it has to happen for episode one. Like it is what it is, and I mean like there isn't really much wrong with it. It's just once again, other films kind of sit above personally. Like I think there's just more emotional attachment to my top two picks over Rogue One. Like I loved Rogue One, but obviously it came out down the line. Like I love the story that it told, but I don't have that same like emotional attachment to it, which is why it's down in
Completely
three.
valid. Yeah, it's all completely valid. Um,
Your number
I'm
three.
yeah, I think I'd have had a lot more problem if you had it outside of the top three.
Yeah.
That I would might have taken as a personal offense, but at this point, it is just like top three for Star Wars. I can
Yeah.
almost accept any order as long as it is like the right three films.
Mm-hmm.
So at three, I've got Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Um, three, two, and one are such a ball ache to get them in the right order.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi for me, it's so damn good. I mean, it is like peak Star Wars. In every part of it, you got the Battle of Andor, you've got the Ewoks,
Yeah.
you've got everything, but it just doesn't hit like two and one do. It's that simple. Um, because it's like the end of a story, but you haven't seen the first half of the story.
Mm.
I think Return of the Jedi is actually helped by Revenge of the Sith. Um,
Yeah.
but it is still an absolute masterpiece, and it changed cinema and how sci-fi films are done and everything. Um, so like, there's no place for it to go other than the top three. I know you had it at four, but in my opinion, it has to go top three. And it's just a pure masterpiece.
Yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with it. It's
Yeah, at this
great. It's
point,
a
it is
phenomenal
just
film.
like I said. It is 98 plays 99. It's
Yeah.
basically perfect. I just like this one a bit more.
Yeah.
Um,
Literally that.
Number two is where we agreed instantly, isn't it? Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, we both got Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. So for the longest time, Empire Strikes Back was kind of the default answer for what is the best Star Wars film.
Mm.
This has slightly changed over time, and as the Star Wars universe has added more context, but Empire Strikes Back still hits to this day.
Yeah. Like, as I said before, usually in trilogies, the second film is the weakest. It happens a lot. In the case of Star Wars, the second film was the strongest. Um, it solidifies Darth Vader as the best villain in film history, in my opinion. We get the whole Luke meets Yoda training, like becoming the Jedi. that he is set to be. It sets up the finale incredibly. We get to like we get the payoff of and I think they allow, which often doesn't happen in films, but like Darth Vader gets to be the one winning. Like we get to see shit going wrong, and I think that's why then the Return of Jedi hits so hard. But yeah, Empire Strikes Back is just like such an incredible like development for all the characters.
Yeah. It has, like I said, it solidifies Darth Vader, and I think nothing solidifies that more than the Cloud City dining room scene
Mm,
where the door opens, Vader's there, Han shoots, he's like, "Yoink, that's my gun. Sit down, have dinner." Um, and then obviously you get the "No, I am your father," just iconic cinema. That I'm actually in a weird way angry I didn't get to experience that. Can you imagine something like that happening today?
oh, the absolute
A
twist.
twist like
Yeah,
that, never being seen before, never being heard of before. Imagine us if that film came out today and like there'd never been a twist like it, and we record the episode the following week.
would have been freaking
Could you
out.
imagine how crazy that would be? And yet it's right there. And obviously we grew up with the prequels and that, so like it wasn't really a surprise anymore. But even without the surprise, the in pain in Mark Hamill's performance of that "No" is just so good.
Mm,
It might be one of cinema's like top 10 most iconic moments.
yeah,
And there's no other way to put it. It has everything that makes Star Wars great, as well as them couple of extra moments. I mean, Boba Fett for the first time as well.
yeah. Also, yeah,
It's just
it,
all of these things that are such iconic Star Wars originate from that.
yeah, and I think to be honest, if you without any emotional attachment to any films, like this is the default. Still, I would say is the default like best Star Wars film. If you
Yeah,
have like no over like emotional attachment to any of us,
yeah, I completely agree.
but in our top
Um,
spot,
yeah,
this
go
is
on, you go
where
first.
we differed quite a bit.
Hmm.
I had Revenge of the Sith. Now, I said at the beginning with my 11th pick, I was trying not to let the animated series influence me, but I will say by this point it kind of has. There's a certain level of bias I just can't ignore because I fucking love Anakin as a character, and having the growth that we got to see in the animated series, it's hard to like not take that into account. Um, I think just getting to see the kind of end point of all his character build up and the kind of the payoff to him becoming corrupted, and we get that final battle between him and Obi-Wan, and like that performance between the two of them is incredible. And besides the memes that it made, like it solidified itself as like a moment in cinema history. That's just like I think because of my love of the character and all the build up and that the end result, I think that's why for me it's number one. I,
I think that's completely valid.
whereas you had Rogue One.
I had Rogue One, which I've always said, and this is why I can accept it not normally being number one for other people, and I never remember which way around it is. Objectively, I believe is the correct term. Let me just double check.
Oh,
Objectively, in a way that is not influenced by personal feelings or opinions. Yet, objectively, I
mm-hmm,
think it's the best Star Wars film because it looks the best.
mm-hmm,
Yes, the original trilogy does still hold up surprisingly well,
mm-hmm,
but just raw how it actually looks, it looks the best. It doesn't rely on force users to be interesting. It actually builds a bit of the mythos around the force through
yep,
Donnie Yen's character.
yep,
Um, and it also fixes one of the largest plot holes in cinema history. Since the dawn of time, people have gone, how did the Empire let the Death Star have such an obvious weakness? And now we know the person who designed the Death Star was being coerced into doing it and created this so that the rebels could take it down. And he hid it there in plain sight. It is one of the most brilliant workarounds to a plot hole I've ever seen, and it is done so beautifully.
Honestly, Star Wars is so good at doing that.
Yes. Obviously, as with everything in the Star Wars universe, other shows that have come out, such as Andor in Rogue One's case, elevate this even further. And that's why a list like this is always going to be in flux, because depending on what's coming out, other areas of the main timeline get given more context and makes them better. But the beauty of it, the way it works, the fact that you're sat there enjoying this film, forgetting that these characters don't exist in the original trilogy, therefore none of them are making it out. It's just phenomenal. It is so good. I have never actually had a film make me feel that way in that moment of just oh shit, they're all none of them are making it out.
It suddenly hits very real in that point.
Just out of nowhere, it finally catches up with you. Also, it is one of Vader's most intimidating performances.
Yeah, it did give us that at the end.
Yeah. You get him a little bit earlier on with the Imperial guy, and he's like, do not disappoint me or whatever, and you're like, oh shit, he intimidating as fuck. Then you get right at the very end, it takes us straight into A New Hope, which makes it even better for binge watching.
Yeah.
And you get to see the hallway scene, which is just and also contextually, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Rogue One came out in 2016.
Pause jump.
Yeah, it came out right around the time Carrie Fisher died. And right at the end, you obviously get it came out 2 weeks before she died. Right at the end, you get her daughter as well as some CGI to show her receiving the information from R2.
Yeah.
And it is just like, I remember seeing that and I'm like, wow, that is. And
yeah.
It fully uses the nostalgia of the original trilogy to elevate it even higher while being a phenomenal film by itself. And I think anyone who has Rogue One out of like that top bracket of Star Wars films is clueless.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Rogue One has been one of the, outside of the trilogies, it has been the best kind of fill piece of content. And honestly, I think it's safe to say after Andor season 2, where we then have the build up to the days before Rogue One, like that whole sequence of characters and events through Andor into Rogue One into A New Hope, like it's just going to be a beautiful sequence of like films and TV.
Yeah. But
So
I mean,
guess if you disagree, or if one of us is more right than the other with our number one pick, me, get in the comments and tell us.
Yeah, let us know down below who you agree with more in their rankings, but also give us your personal ranking. What would you have done differently?
And also,
do you think we did Solo rough? Should Solo be higher? You cretins.
Also, agree with us. I'm sure you can all agree that this is the only rankings that matters.
Yeah, everyone else's ranking is terrible. The amount of people I saw with Solo in like their top 4 made me feel physically violent.
Yeah, I don't understand that. People that put some of the Disney ones way higher, and it's like, how?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hori? What was your earliest memory of superheroes and TV shows?
Well, in the year 1756,
he witnessed the first superhero.
So I was trying to think about this because it's like, obviously my brain is very much filled with the early days of the MCU, but before that, trying to like remember what, because I wasn't really a comic kid. I didn't really read comics as a kid. So then it's like, what films did I see on that like were on TV and stuff, and it racked my brain. And like the earliest like thing I can think of anything is the OG Superman film. Um, Seeing that on TV or whatever, and that being like no, like in your head, you're like Superman, and that's what I pictured. Um, and I would say that also then plays into Smallville is a very early memory for me. Um, Being a great TV series that wasn't necessarily like hard, like this is a superhero thing. It like kind of mix of your typical like TV drama series and then Superman. Um, Outside of that, I guess it's then Raimi's Spider-Man films. Those are like my early memories. Kind of very much TV or film media for me. They're kind of like I can picture in my head as like an early memory. I don't
Okay.
know what it was. I'm gonna guess it's comics for you.
So it's funny because I've got a really, really bad childhood, not childhood, memory of my childhood. So like my first like vivid memories are relatively like I'm like 7, 8, or 9, which is bringing us up to like almost the beginning of the MCU in like 2008.
Yeah.
Um, but the first evidence I could find anywhere of me having superhero related stuff is the comic book that I've discussed before from like 2004, but it was like one of them like magazine style comic books
Mm,
that like you get for like £2 in it to have a little toy stuck on the front. The Zoomers have no idea what I'm talking about.
no.
Um, and that was a comic with Spider-Man and Namor. Um,
Okay.
so like that's like the first real evidence I have of it. But my most vivid memory, and I don't know exactly kind of what year this is, because originally I put 0708, but that's when Iron Man's coming out, and this was definitely before that. So it might have been 0506. Was the old like 90s Spider-Man cartoons being rerun
Mm,
on like a Saturday morning, and I'd watch like the really old ones, like that had everything going on. It had all the villains, proper old style art, and I vividly remember watching so much of that. But like getting the quite timings of what's what quite right is quite tricky. It could have just as easily been the Spider-Man cartoons or the X-Men
I
films
was
or the
just thinking of
Raimi
X-Men.
films, because all of them were happening around a similar time. And genuinely, it could have been any one of them that I saw first that led to me seeing. It could have been my parents took me to go see Spider Man because he's a kid, it's Spider Man. He goes to see the film, and then I started watching the cartoons, or I already watched the cartoons. They're like, well, there's a film, let's go see that.
Mm,
Um, but it was definitely around them, like early to mid 2000s, with the Spider Man cartoons, Spider Man Raimi films, the X Men films, that kind of stuff.
yeah, I just remembered about the X-Men then because the first X-Men film came out in 2000. So I
It's
definitely,
wild that I remember these films so vividly, but that came out when I was a year old.
well, yeah, this is the thing. X-Men came out when I was 5, so I definitely wasn't watching that at 5, but it must have been on TV at some point where I've watched it
Shout
in
out
those early
ITV.
years. Yeah. Because like the first two X-Men, and like that came into my head then as you were talking. It's like, oh shit, Wolverine. Like that's one of the earliest like superheroes that I remember as well. And
Yeah,
it's like,
but you also had the Incredible Hulk, didn't you? What year was that? The one that wasn't part of the MCU. Um,
oh, I know which.
no, I think it was just called the Hulk. 2003. Like I vividly remember that film, so vividly.
Yeah.
But I definitely didn't watch it in
Well,
2003.
here's the thing. I think what it is a lot of those early superhero films from the early 2000s obviously wasn't as big as it is now. So a lot of them just ended up on TV being rerun on TV.
Constantly, yeah, possibly.
Um,
But
and
I mean, the Ben Affleck Daredevil film was 2003 as well.
yeah, see that
I
film I don't really remember, so I don't think I ever watched it fully.
I vividly remember that. And Colin Farrell as Bullseye.
Do you want to know what's funny? I just looked up Smallville. So Smallville started in 2001. Obviously, it was like a TV,
Yeah.
like teenagers in high school. I saw that because my sister used to watch it, And I wouldn't say my sister's like a big superhero thing, but obviously because of like what the TV show it was. It's like I remember sitting and being like, "Ah, oh, Smallville," and then he's like, "This is Superman." Just they're not calling it that.
Yeah. It is really interesting to sit there and think though, just how, bearing in mind we consider like how much superhero content comes out now. In
Yeah,
reality, there has always been loads. It
yeah.
just
That
wasn't all put together.
no, it wasn't all like one cohesive like the MCU. It wasn't like one big world.
What
Like,
we did was we grew up on all of that stuff being there, but not being connected, and then they floated the concept of them all mattering together, and we went, "Fuck yes."
well, it's like the closest is like the X-Men films, and they still were coming out like 3 years apart. Like the first three X-Men films. It's like, yeah, they were all like same school, same characters. It's like, but this wasn't multiple films a year where we know this story is like continuing all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's wild trying to look back and remember what the early memories were outside of like comics, obviously.
It's so interesting because I mean, I imagine for the most part, basically every guy our age at some point or another for a Halloween dressed up as a Spider-Man or a Batman.
Most likely. Yeah.
Probably before they were old enough to decide what they wanted to go as by themselves.
Yeah.
It is weird, like superheroes, although like they seem like this huge part of our culture now, they were clearly a huge part of our culture before because I mean kids were being dressed up as them as just part of growing up.
I think what happened is just like the cultural acceptance of what age to be super interested in stuff has raised because themes and stuff in these things have raised to be like match with the growing demographic.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. When we were growing up, it was only cool to like superheroes as a kid. And then as we kind of got to 15, 16, it was like, oh no, like young adults can be into superheroes still.
Do
Look,
you,
they swear now.
yeah, and I actually like I keep mentioning it, but I actually think Smallville was a good thing for like that teenage age to be still interested in it. And you're like, oh wait, this is like actually still a cool thing to be watching and keeping up
Yeah,
with, even though it's just Superman.
yeah. They just finally found that generation to latch onto
Yeah, they did.
to follow through with. Um, but it is just it's absolutely crazy how long that these have been a big part of our life. Um, and the
And
fact that we're still here wanting more.
yeah, more.
Yeah, but superhero fatigue.
Mm. Yeah, that's true.
Um, Nerd News Network time.
Yes, the latest news.
There is a plethora.
Yeah, widespread.
Yeah,
That's what-
just so many different things.
Mm,
First and foremost, WWE superstar Seth Rollins was captured in Captain America: New World Order set photos.
mm,
So he's been cast in a role. His suit looked very greeny, which gives me kind of Hydra-y, evil-y vibes.
yeah.
Um, I'm going to be honest. The Rock, despite there being many other decent WWE superstars turned actors,
Uh-huh.
has left a bad taste in my mouth. But I'm willing to give Seth Rollins a chance, just in case he can turn into a Batista or a John
Mm.
Cena for us.
I was gonna say Batista is the best of what we could get.
Batista recently has been getting a lot of plaudits from people who are not more knowledgeable on the skill of acting than me.
Mm.
And they all say he's a very good and very professional and should be given more respect. And their opinion means enough that I'm willing to say, yeah, he's probably the best.
Well, yeah, it's there's more stories now about him as like how he is as an actor.
Yeah.
As time's gone on. I will say, as someone who has never really followed WWE, I have no fucking clue who Seth Rollins is.
He is one of the newer generation superstars.
Okay.
Um,
Doesn't surprise me that now we've
I didn't
had.
realize he was branching out into acting.
Well, here's the thing, right? I was just gonna say, like, we've had a few WWE stars now kind of branch into the world of acting, and some have had more success than others, but it's becoming a more not unusual thing to see. And I think
Well,
depending on the role, it can work.
so what you had was you had WWE set up their own studios,
Mm,
and basically what they did was people came to them with film ideas and a superstar they thought would be good in that film. And then superstars who wanted to maybe have an acting career after the success of The Rock, who did it all by himself,
mm,
WWE went, okay, we're going to facilitate a little bit here and take our 20%.
yeah,
Um, and it's now kind of moved even further away from just they have their own in-house films that they do to they're managing to push them into these bigger roles. Um, like I said, like my brother's big into WWE. I don't remember him mentioning to me that Seth Rollins had been doing other acting projects, so maybe this is his first really big go at anything.
possibly.
But it'll be interesting. I mean, if he's like a henchman with a bit more chatty lines
Yeah,
or a
top.
secondary villain, he can probably do just fine.
Yeah,
It'll
that's.
be interesting to see.
I think in a film like Captain America, like it doesn't surprise me having a big like top tier henchman who's doing a bit more.
Yeah, and maybe it means the action sequences are going to be a bit more physical.
Mm, true.
Um, On to another wrestler turned actor,
uh,
The Rock.
Connor's favorite person.
That man tanked Black Adam so hard, he's gone back and begged for his role back in the Fast and Furious franchise, even swallowing his massive fucking ego and agreeing to work with Vin Diesel again.
Has he asked to go back in?
Based on the reports, yes.
Okay.
I don't know if this. I don't know if this has been like turned into a bigger thing by people of the internet finding hilarious after all the shit talking him and Vin Diesel did that he's back
Mm,
in, or what.
possibly.
But a lot of there was a running joke. I don't know how much of it is true that my man tanked Black Adam so hard he's had to go and beg for his job back.
So when I first heard that, I was like, knowing that this is as far off as it is, still, this is them on the final strip for like the finish line is somewhat in sight. I thought, well, I wonder if they have a very kind of the story idea, and they would have been like, oh, it'd be nice to have the Rock return for the end of it all, and they've approached him and they've managed to come to some agreement. I
Either
wouldn't.
that, or they've written the story so that Vin Diesel's character and The Rock's character never interact,
Well, yeah, this is the other thing. It's
so
like
they just never have to be on set
the
together.
Rock re-entering could literally just be he shows up at the end and it's not in a scene with Vin. Like it's just or like somewhat one of the other actors has to go to him for help. It it doesn't surprise me that there's some like agreement has been come to because they know for the fact of like closing it out, it would be good to have his character return to close out. I get it.
Yeah,
But I mean, as we said, the finish line might be in sight, but it's still going on to the next point. 3 films away.
2 films away.
Well,
If we're to be believed. So originally, Fast X was going to be a
uh-huh.
two-parter,
Yep.
and everyone was like, "Just fucking end it. It's the 10th film. Enough is enough." But they were like, "No, it's going to be a two-parter to finish the franchise for good." And then on the red carpet for this event, Vin Diesel seems to have confirmed that actually the studio have asked them to make it a 3-part ending. So there'll be 2 more films in the Fast X arc to end the franchise. It's not going to end the fucking franchise at all.
So here's because I know other than the news stuff, you don't often pay attention. I think it was 2 films ago, there was a question as to like, oh, how many of these are you making? And apparently we had Vin Diesel said 10 because he'd made a promise to Paul Walker that they were going to make 10 of these films. That was the promise and the vision for it. And to stick to that after Paul Walker died was he planned to stick to that promise and they were going to make 10. And I'm like, okay, I can understand wanting to do that. Sure. You're stretching them out, but okay, I'm okay. Like, fine. Do your 10. I feel like a few years back, there was like a weird rumor that, like, we're going to get 12 Fast and Furious. And everyone's like, no, no. And then it came out like, oh no, he's just stopping at 10. For whatever reason, they then were like, oh, let's make it a two-parter. And they've obviously gone to the studio, and the studio's like, the first draft cut and gone, could you make this 3 so we end on 12 rather than like 11? And then it's like, yeah, sure, you want more money? Okay. However well it does. But
Yeah, it's craziness.
I'm of the similar opinion, like, should have got to 10 and ended it.
They
Do you know
should have
what?
stopped at 5.
They should have stopped at 5. It was they it, there's so many things they should have done. It's long gone that like they should never have gone into space, but we accept that now.
They should have stopped when characters started catching cars and stomping, causing earthquakes, and hiring actors who have clauses about how many punches they're allowed to take written into their contract. I'm sick of it.
The yeah. Do you know what? This is like on our news thing, and it was a thing I saw on TikTok that kind of has come to light with the titling of Fast and Furious X.
Mm-hmm.
None of the films, considering they are a series of films, not a single film has the same way of titling itself as the others.
Yeah, no, they just do it.
Every single one is, it's like, who the fuck is coming up with these? Like, someone that actually went through them, and it's like, they're so different. Like, so different.
The Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Yeah.
Then it was just do the first 3 when it was still decent.
It gets worse though. Because then you had just Fast and Furious, no the anymore.
Yeah.
Then it was Fast 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Furious has gone out the window. Then it's back to Fast and Furious, but it's Fast and Furious 6. Then it's Furious 7, no more Fast anymore. Then it was
Fate of the Furious.
Then it was Fate of the Furious, and everyone's like, oh, this is the finale. No. Like, then the next one is just F9. Just F9. And now we're on Fast X. Now we're doing Roman numerals. So
it's an absolute mess of crap.
They should have stopped on 4, maybe stretched to 5 when they did the bank robbery and got all the money.
Yep.
But there.
So, next bit of news doesn't seem that exciting. But there is a deeper concern behind it.
Oh.
That I don't think you will have considered, but I'm going to blow your mind with.
Oh, I'm ready.
So, all 8 Harry Potter films I've written coming down here, but they've arrived on Netflix in the UK and Ireland.
Okay.
Ooh. Would you like to know the gaping problem with this? What? That means that Max is not going to be available in the UK for a long time, because there is no way that Warner Brothers and HBO Max, etc., who own the rights to the 8 Harry Potter films, are going to sign a deal for probably at least 2, if not 3 years with Netflix, if they're going to be launching their service in the next 2 to 3 years. Because that would be a big selling point to the UK audience, as we know from how big a deal Netflix have made out of it. Unless they've literally signed them on a very strict 1-year deal,
maybe.
I don't think it's a good sign.
See, yeah, you make I did think this, like, it's a bit of a weird thing to go to Netflix with it. One thought I had in my head is like, oh, they don't want them on Max because they're going to be doing the new Harry Potter series, and it's like they didn't want to compete, like, but then it's weird, like, why you wouldn't. No, and it's like, I think unfortunately you're right, which sucks for us because we're gonna have to find ways to watch those shows, whether it's through, if Now TV keeps doing like stuff with them, or
we've discussed the problems with
HBO.
the way HBO Max is operating inside the UK, and you've got to hope that the show you want to watch has got a partnership deal with someone. Yes, Now TV
Mm.
get a lot of the deals, but some
Don't
of
get
them are
all.
just random deals or don't get a deal at all, and you're there like, well, what am I supposed to do now?
Do you know
If
what?
only there was a flag that was all black with a skull and crossbones that could give us some indication as to what to do if companies
Mm.
are going to make it so difficult to watch their content.
So you know how last week I mentioned we need a streaming platform that does
Yep.
packages. Can they hurry up and bring that out?
Is it going to be us? Or are we going to be the ones to do it?
We're going to go sit down at the table with all these streaming companies and be like, look,
Yeah. Just start kicking their front doors in and going, we are going to make you money as long as you stop being dickheads.
yeah, we have it as a checkbox system. So you pick all the streaming services you want to pay for and you get it as a discounted price.
Mm-hmm.
All in one app. Job's
Exactly. Talking of streaming services,
good. Yes.
we've got some dates for stuff on Disney Plus. So we said last week that Loki's coming in October.
Mm-hmm.
We now have a hard date for when that starts.
We do.
Loki season 2 is kicking off October 6th of this year. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I cannot wait. So we've got that coming to close out the year. Probably going to be 6 to 10 episodes again, which is probably going to take us basically to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Or will it? Because Echo, which we thought, oh, well, they're both supposed to be coming out this summer, so
Yep.
Echo's probably not coming out till 2024. Wrong. All episodes dropping Netflix binge watch style, coming out November 29th. That is a Wednesday, Hori. So either mean you were not sleeping that night, or we're going to discuss it a week late. We will see how many episodes it is.
Or we do it in 2 chunks.
Yeah, we might have to do that.
So
but it's going to be interesting.
yeah, and I'm like, because we obviously, like you said last week, we got the rough date for Loki, and we're like, okay, it's end of summer, which means Echo's not coming out till probably next year. Then they say Echo's dropping all episodes. Now, I'm wondering if this is Disney. We don't like Disney generally doesn't do all episode drops. Generally,
No, they don't. They haven't at all before now.
The only thing they've done it with is Visions, Star Wars Visions.
Yes, and Tales of the Jedi.
Yes, which are all like
two
short,
shorts.
yeah, short series.
Shorts.
So
and there's no reason to think Echo's going to be
no,
15-minute episodes.
So I'm wondering if this is them, like they tested with the Werewolf at Night with a new style of things. This is them seeing if this is a better way to release their shows so that they're received better.
Yeah.
Um.
Another interesting thing I've just realised.
Oh.
New content day changed to a Wednesday for Marvel content. The first episode of Loki comes out on a Friday.
They're not doing like a Friday and then back to Wednesday the following week. They've done that before.
I don't know. Maybe we get 2 episodes on that Friday and then the following episodes on the Wednesday. I don't know. They might do all Fridays. If they do all Fridays, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Fridays before Echo's due to come out. So it could be 8 episodes. If we say it's a double release on the first day, maybe 9 episodes, which is not uncommon for Disney Plus Marvel shows.
So they're going to go from Loki straight into dumping Echo on us.
Yeah, we're going to finish the Loki the week before Echo comes out.
I wonder if this is also a scheduling struggle, as in they knew Echo's going to be done production-wise and ready to go. And it's like, the things have got shifted around. It's like, well, where do we fit this in now? And they still kind of like, well, we'd like to release it this year. And then someone's turning around going, well, why don't you just drop it as all the episodes and trial that? And they're gone, why don't we?
Would you like my theory that if it's true, will make everyone very happy?
What's that?
Echo is a Daredevil character.
Mm-hmm.
The Daredevil show was on Netflix. This is a Netflix style drop.
Ooh, you think they're gonna do Daredevil as a Netflix style drop?
I
For
don't think they are because it's 24 episodes and that'd be madness from them. But maybe they're just letting people know we know the roots. Don't
well,
worry about it.
they
Or
could.
maybe if it echoes only 6 episodes, they're going okay for 6 episodes we'll just drop it all in one go, and then or maybe they're going to use it somewhere to differentiate. Anything that's weekly is very important for main stuff. You need to know it. Anything we drop all in one go, if you care, watch it. If you don't worry.
With Daredevil being 24 episodes, they could do a thing that Netflix has done with Stranger Things, where they dumped it in two chunks.
Maybe.
Who knows?
It's a really interesting one because I understand what you're saying about them just trying different strategies to work out how people want their content,
Mm.
but to go from 9 weeks,
Yeah,
eight
no.
weeks of weekly release after so long without like a Marvel show at that point, to then 8 weeks, boom. Whereas normally they like take 2 weeks off and then
Yeah.
start the new show and then cover another month and a half. Especially with writer strikes and Blade delays and everything's been delayed a little bit. I thought they'd be going, oh, we've got a bit of time here. Why don't we fill up them weeks so that we stay in people's eye lines?
I genuinely think it's something like they didn't want to push Echo back to next year, and it's gonna be done, and they need it out for some reason. Though they don't want to push it back because then it's going to cause a domino effect with other things. So they're like, well, screw it, we're just gonna have to drop it here in one chunk.
Yeah, maybe.
I bet I wonder if it would have been weekly, but Loki getting pushed back out of the summer has messed that up.
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe.
it's a lot of content for us.
Yeah, we were like, okay, cool. Film bubble coming up in the next couple of weeks here. Then we've got Star Wars stuff to get us through late summer, early year, and then we're like, oh, there's not a lot coming in the back end of the year. We'll have to see what happens. And now all of a sudden, just 15 episodes on our forehead.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. We'll see how it goes. Next up, yes, Yukio and Negasonic Teenage Warhead. I got it right that time. I could not spell it earlier and didn't write it down, but I remembered it.
Nice.
Will be returning in Deadpool 3. I don't think it's huge news. I think everyone would have just been actually a bit disappointed if they didn't at least make an appearance. But it's good to know that they definitely are making an appearance.
Do you know what that means though? We get we've seen her interaction with Deadpool and like the enjoyment that was the comedy that was there. We're gonna add Wolverine into that mix. And he's just gonna be like fucking teenagers and just grumpy old man.
It's gonna be so good.
It's gonna be great. Honestly, can't wait.
And the end of an era.
Yes, it will be.
Like the most obscure. It felt like it was never going to fit. I'm going to find out exactly when it started.
What?
So the last episode of The Flash, the CW Arrowverse show,
yes,
is next week.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take a guess when this show started?
Oh, so it was. I would say when I was I was college. Which, I'm going to say like 10 years ago.
You're not far off. October 7th, 2014 was when the first episode came out. I remember this was when I was really starting to get into like the obsessively nerdy level of shit I'm into now with superhero stuff. I remember watching the first 2 seasons of Arrow and getting Barry Allen make that cameo. And then he goes back and he gets struck by lightning. And then you never hear anything about it again really in Arrow until like the crossovers start.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, who was that random guy who got struck by lightning? And that's the first time I really vividly remember Googling something. And that was my introduction to now my favourite character of The Flash.
Yeah, I remember Green Arrow coming out when I was here and I'm like, oh, I don't really know much about this Green Arrow. Obviously, it was like midst of like MCU films. So getting into all that. And it's like, started watching Green Arrow and I was like, oh, Flash? Cool. Let's also watch Flash. they didn't like the fatigue of the CW shows definitely hit, and like obviously I fell off from watching them.
The
But
quality dipped a little bit in the mid there.
yeah, and it's wild that it was like the second series to start, but it's the last to finish. Like it's been going a hot like that's the sole survivor of the CW stuff, and it's like they've done a good job with it
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah, it's had its dips and stuff, but for the most part, it's been good. Peak Flash, season 2 and 3 of The Flash,
Mm,
some of the best superhero television of all time.
yeah, I would agree.
Um, that brings us on to the Content Championship.
Mm,
This is what is
new.
replacing the Superhero Showdown. So, let me explain how this
Yes.
is going to work. This week is a test run. This is not part of any bracket. This is so everyone understands how it works. We will take two pieces of content. We do not care what they are. They will most likely be films and television. There is no reason we couldn't include more. It will just most likely be films and television.
Mhm.
We will then decide which one is better based on these parameters.
Mm,
Personal relevance, i.e., how we as individuals feel about the film and the emotional attachment we have to these projects. How well it has aged. Just because you loved it when it came out doesn't mean you still love it now. And just
true.
because you hated it when it came out doesn't mean you still hate it now.
Also true.
Rewatchability. I think a lot of nerd content hinges on how likely you are to rewatch it. If you're never going to go back and watch that, it's not as good as something that you want to watch every week.
Mm-hmm.
And then your more traditional categories.
Technical difficulties here, folks.
Away slightly from
Oh,
cinematography. Oh,
he's back. You cut out that whole time when you said traditional categories
oh,
and
okay,
then
cool. We
froze.
haven't lost that much time.
No.
Traditional categories of story, acting, and cinematography. Um, Cinematography, I don't think we've got quite right in like the official definition, because that's going to include not just how it's shot, but also your CGI type stuff, how visually appealing it is.
Yeah.
Um, and they're the kind of things we're looking at. Um, so should we get into this, Mr. Zontal? Do you want to talk us through your pick for this week?
Yeah. So this week, as Connor said, not part of the bracket. So we just came up with some picks more for example case and kind of test run things. So with all the Guardians of the Galaxy talk the past couple of weeks, with us seeing the new film, talking about the trilogy, and talking about all the good stuff of Volume 3, I decided to take it back and pick Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 as my pick for this.
Yeah.
Now, you hit us back with Revenge of the Sith.
I would just like to state when I chose this film, I
Yes.
did not realize Hori had it in number one in his Star Wars
No,
rankings.
you didn't. And when I
I
saw
chose
it,
this because I watched it so recently.
when I saw that, I was like, man's just read this really hard for me.
To be fair, I was trying to pick something that I thought was a similar caliber.
Yeah, no, okay. That's what we want. We want something that we feel can kind of match the other in some way.
Yes.
So, this is difficult. It's like, and I think the best way is to go through the categories
Yeah.
as we've previously discussed. So, I mean, personal relevance. Again, unknowing to you, both hit very hard for me. Both have very strong nostalgia things and like love for them. Obviously, we've discussed about Revenge of the Sith earlier in the episode, but it is my favorite Star Wars film. If you haven't seen that part of the episode, and the payoff and final battle are all things that I love. And then you got Guardians of the Galaxy, which out of all the MCU is one of the best character introduction films. Has a incredible soundtrack that to this day sticks in my head, and I listened to on repeat after that film came out. So this really is pretty much a stalemate for me in this category. I don't know about you.
So I've only really got comments down for Revenge of the Sith. But I mean, I can freeball my feelings of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. So for me, Revenge of the Sith, although I said earlier that I didn't love it when it first came out, it was the first Star Wars film I know for a fact I saw in the cinema.
Mhm.
Now, regular listeners of the podcast will know I am a big sucker for the cinema.
Yes, you are.
So it's always going to hold a special place in my heart as the first Star Wars film I saw in cinema. On the other side, Guardians, as we discussed a couple of weeks back, first Guardians film came out about a week after me and my girlfriend got together. So like
Mhm.
it really, that is like a check mark in my life around that period of time that film is forever tied to. And my life has been substantially better since that than before it. So it's really interesting. And like you said, the film, like the soundtrack, it changed a lot of what we perceived superhero content to be.
It did.
So it is really difficult. I personally would probably, on personal relevance, go Guardians Volume 1 for me. Because I think in that aspect it was closer for me. But Revenge of the Sith is like I said, the first Star Wars
See,
film I saw in cinema.
it's a tough one, and it almost is a stalemate. I think if I had to pick one way or the other, I would lean Revenge of the Sith purely because it is my my favorite Star Wars film, and due to like some of the other categories, like it just hits that a little bit harder.
Mm-hmm. How well it has aged.
So, I mean, Revenge of the Sith has aged
Phenomenally.
like a fine wine. Much better now than when it came out. Hugely helped by the animated series.
Could you not argue that Volume 3 has made the other two Guardians films not also aged like fine wine?
This is also true, and it's so hard when like my pick is being pitted against this, and it's like I'm fighting against myself essentially here, but it's like I don't, you're right. Like Guardians does age like really well. I think for me, because of the animated series and all that extra like story we got behind Anakin and his character, like that has made Revenge of the Sith age so much more. That I have to go Revenge of the Sith on how well it's aged.
I would argue, based on the fact that we initially said we view them both as equals, you have to say Revenge of the Sith has aged better
Mm,
because when it came out, it was nowhere near the level.
yes,
So it
that's
has to have
also
aged better just
yeah,
by
true.
common sense. But Guardians has also aged phenomenally.
Yeah, it has.
Rewatchability. I've watched Revenge of the Sith more recently than I've watched Guardians 1.
I would say I've watched the early phases of the MCU, rewatched them a couple of times. I have definitely rewatched Star Wars though more. And I've sat and binged Star Wars as a whole once, which I haven't done with like Guardians or any like, and I haven't. Yeah, I would say if you have to tell me right now, do you want to watch Guardians or Revenge of the Sith? I'm going to say I want to watch Revenge of the Sith. Like,
It's really interesting because despite the fact they're both part of huge franchises, the size of the MCU, if someone says you want to watch a Marvel film, it then becomes really difficult to know which one to watch.
mm,
But with Star Wars, you'll have a couple that you go back to.
yeah,
Any of the original trilogy, Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One. You say any of them to me, I'm like, put it the fuck on.
yeah, I would agree.
I would say they're pretty even, but I would probably allow Revenge of the Sith to just edge it.
It's looking good for Revenge of the Sith right now.
Yeah, but now we're getting into the more technical aspects of films. the story. So, in my notes for Revenge of the Sith in story, I wrote, strongest of the prequels by far, crucial to the Star Wars universe, also Order 66. However, can you, with a dead straight face, tell me you genuinely think Revenge of the Sith is a better written story than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1?
So I had similar notes on Revenge of the Sith, as in like it had the payoff of the whole prequels and the tie into the OG trilogy, plus my love for Anakin as a character. But if you look at it as just that film, and I try my hardest to take the story from the animated series out of it, the story of just
That
that
2 hour film.
like it's a very rushed character development, or it comes across that way.
Yeah.
Guardians has a very strong story, and also played into the bigger plot of the MCU, but didn't take away from the characters in that film. And it's like,
Yep.
with the films on their own, I think Guardians does have a stronger story alone.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a wild thing to say.
No, I don't think it is either. And I think the next one in acting is an even bigger W for Guardians. I do not think the acting quality of Revenge of the Sith is on par with Guardians 1. It is by no means bad, but there are a couple of bits that are
dated.
Yes. Put it this way, the prequels got memed to fuck.
Mm.
And yes, that has made us love them through nostalgia, but the acting in them moments isn't ideal. The hello there, General Kenobi, or I am the Senate, it's treason then. Unlimited power!
I think the only
it's very mid 2000s. It didn't feel out of place at the time.
The great acting of Revenge of the Sith is that final moment between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Yes.
Like that whole
all of
sequence,
the top tier acting is saved up for that moment.
Like that sequence, incredible. If it was all that, Guardians wouldn't have a chance. But I do agree that like the acting and writing has become dated somewhat, and yeah, it's got meme to shit, and I don't think it's a unfair statement to say that Guardians has a very strong level of acting.
Yes, yeah. And then again, cinematography. Can we say 2005 Revenge of the Sith honestly looked better than 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy? Like, do you actually have like an argument that's not? Because I genuinely can't think of a single scene that I look at and go, that's really pretty in Revenge of the Sith. It's
again, the
either
final
a very
scene,
practical set where it looks good, or it's a little bit of CGI.
The final fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin is probably the best looking thing of that film.
But even looking back on it, something like CGI isn't ideal.
No. And do you know what it is, actually? If this was a film from the OG trilogy, I'd actually lean on that because they learned so heavily on practical. And I think the practical stuff looks incredible, and miniature looks incredible in that. For this, like, Guardians came out at like peak in what was becoming the new height of what the MCU was. Like, visuals look incredible.
We had a CGI raccoon and tree for the entirety of the film, and at no point did you find yourself going, that looks shit.
Yeah, there was no Uncanny Valley, but like, yeah, you can't really. I think the only thing that Star Wars has is like the way that the directing and cinematography shots are like set up.
Yes.
That like it has very classical cinematography stuff that looks like the way the shots are framed and set up, sure, looks great, great cinematography. Overall, Guardians just hits in more places though.
So what we've said is we're giving personal relevance just to Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Yeah. How well it's aged goes to the Revenge of the Sith by a mile. It's aged
Yeah.
phenomenally. Rewatchability we gave to Revenge of the Sith again, just.
Well,
But we did say, oh, go on.
I would say rewatchability. I'll happily sit down and rewatch Revenge of the Sith over Guardians.
But we have said that story, acting, and cinematography, it's kind of Guardians has stomped them there. I think overall Guardians probably just wins.
I think. Do you know what it is? I have to agree. But if this was a world where the animated series was included in story and we knew all that, like if all that story build up had been in Revenge of the Sith,
If
Revenge of the Sith
everything
by a
came out in
mile.
chronological order.
But even like, yeah, it's just with animated series, Revenge of the Sith wins. But Revenge of the Sith on its own without that other influence, then I think it's fair to say that Guardians of the Galaxy takes this head to head. Which strangely,
Means
which is a mix of emotions for me because it's my pick, but also it's against my favorite Star Wars film is Lost, and I'm like,
is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 your favorite MCU film?
No, because
No. So what you're saying is your favorite Star Wars film isn't even competing with your favorite MCU film.
Here's the thing, though, right? On these categories, if you were to ask me outright, what film would I rather sit down and watch? Necessarily, like the top three
That's what the
categories,
rewatch. That's what. Yeah, no. The top three are all very subjective,
they take
and
a
then the
lot
bottom
more
three are
weight.
very objective.
Yes, and it's
Um,
like objectively, sure, Guardians of the Galaxy is a not even my favorite MCU film is a better film than
than your
Avengers.
favorite. Yeah. See,
But
here's the thing: your favorite Star Wars film is not as good as not the best MCU film, but that's that like it's two different categories. The
yeah,
best versus your favorite are never going to be the same, or very rarely going to be the same.
exactly.
But there we go. That is the content championship. Ooh, I'm going to enjoy this, and I feel like this is going to cause a lot more people to have angry comments. And all interactions are good interactions. And to make you feel better, Hori, at some point we will do Rogue One, which is my favorite Star Wars film, versus Captain America: Winter Soldier, my favorite MCU film.
Ooh.
Just so I have to experience the pain you've gone through.
Do you know what I'm gonna do for that one? Whatever side, like for whatever category you go, okay, I'm going with this. I'm gonna argue the opposite purely for the sake of making you question yourself.
Just make me question my own sanity.
But
Um,
this is gonna be good. There's a
yeah,
lot, and a lot of these, like sometimes it might be completely. In a way, these two films are very on paper, like from a glance, you wouldn't pit them against each other. You'd find other things that maybe sit closer, but
and
there'll be
there are going to be
times.
times we're going to have like a 90-minute film up against 10 seasons of a TV show.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, as soon as we started in TV shows into mix, it gets a bit more difficult because obviously, like,
Yeah,
we're not going to pick just one episode. It's going to be
the
a whole.
totality of the
Yeah,
show. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and I can't wait to see how much fun we can have with it.
the entirety of the animated Clone Wars series
It sweeps.
versus
It is to
versus
this what the Flash was to Super Showdown.
the entirety of the animated series versus the remaining selection of the Star Wars. What's better? All the Star Wars films or one animated series?
Oh, you're going to cause some arguments there. Anyway, I think
Yes.
that's it from us. This has been episode 67. We'll be back next week.
If you haven't already, like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Leave comments.
I'm normally so good for remembering to do that stuff.
I'm
a fraud.
What has happened? It's all fallen apart here at the end.
No, I got too excited by the content championship. I've got to ask you to like and subscribe.
And don't forget to tell us what your favorite Star Wars film is, or how terribly wrong we are with our picks.
Yes. We'll see you next week.
But yeah, we'll see you next week.